Hey, hello, what's up everyone? In this video I'm going to teach you about what happens when Mercury is sitting in the 7th house of your D9 chart or Navamsa chart in Vedic astrology. So before beginning, if you guys not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe to my channel, hit the bell icon and click the like button. And if you guys have any doubt after watching this video, please do mention it in my below comment section, okay? And yes, please to like and follow my Facebook community page Parikshith Astrology, where you can also post some astrological stuff and gain knowledge. So let's begin. So mainly, what do you mean by Navamsa chart or the D9 chart? See, Navamsa chart or the D9 chart is the second most important chart after your birth chart. It is mainly seen for your strengthness of your planet. It is also seen for your actually the relationship between you and your spouse, your married life and also your marital life. Now, see, Navamsa chart or the D9 chart mainly gets activated after your second half of your life, or after 33 years or 36 years of your age. Now coming to the strengthness of your planet. Now let's say for example, if any planet is debilitated in your birth chart. Now let's say for example, if Sun is debilitated in your birth chart and that planet Sun has been exalted in the Navamsa chart or the D9 chart, that shows that that planet Sun has gained extra strength or extra power. Now coming to the married life. See, every individual divisional chart including the main birth chart has its own Karaka planet or the significator planet, right? Now suppose for example in your birth chart, Sun is the Karaka planet or the significator planet, right? Likewise in your Navamsa chart or the D9 chart, Venus is the Karaka planet or the significator planet. So Venus should be placed in an exalted sign, Mool Trikon sign, own sign or in a friendly sign. That shows that your married life will be very good. Now 7th house of your D9 chart represents your spouse characteristics, your spouse nature, your spouse attitude. It also represents your ability to compromise in the marriage or not, can be seen through the 7th house of your D9 chart or Navamsa chart. Now what happens when Mercury is sitting in the 7th house of your D9 chart or Navamsa chart? Normally planet Mercury represents your intelligence. It also represents your business or business type of nature. It also represents communication, verbal communication, any type of communication. It also represents the printing industry, media stuff and all. It also represents the comedians and all. It also represents technical things related to the software part and all. So these are all things can be seen through the planet Mercury. It also represents the practical thinking of a person or logical ability, you can say. Now if Mercury is sitting in the 7th house of your D9 chart or Navamsa chart, that shows that your spouse will be very youthful in nature, that is the look wise. It also shows that your spouse will be practical, your spouse might be dual minded, your spouse might be fickle minded. It also shows that your spouse might be very intelligent and having some cunningness, okay. It also shows that your spouse might be having like business type of mind, like money minded and all. It also shows that your spouse might be having some nervous problem or nervous issue or also skin disease, I know, because Mercury represents skin and nervous, right? Some type of that disease or some health problems if Mercury is afflicted. Now what happens when Mercury is conjuncted with benefic planets and malefic planets? Now coming to the benefic planets. Now Mercury itself is a benefic, right? Now what happens when Mercury is conjuncted with different benefic planets like Moon, Jupiter or Venus? Now coming to the planet Moon. Now what happens when Moon and Mercury are conjuncted? Now what does Moon represents? It represents your mother. It represents your happiness. It also represents your emotions, your mind, okay. So when Moon and Mercury are conjuncted in the 7th house, that shows that your spouse might fight with your mother, like some might be having some verbal arguments with your mother, because the verbal communication can be seen through Mercury. Your Moon is represented by mother or mother is represented by Moon. So when Moon and Mercury are conjuncted, your spouse might be having some verbal argument with your mother. And it also shows that there might be chances of having business. So after the married life, you might have your own business or your spouse might be running a business, okay. And it also shows that your spouse is very practical. Now what happens when Mercury is conjuncted with planet Jupiter? Now what does planet Jupiter represent? It represents divine knowledge, spiritual knowledge, right? It also represents teacher, okay. So it also represents any broker or a financial manager or any type of this one what is that, you can say any type of lawyer, you can say. Now when Jupiter and Mercury are conjunct in the 7th house, their spouse can be a beautiful lawyer or a good lawyer, you can say. It also shows that their spouse can be very good at managing the finance. It also shows that their spouse might work in banking sector or can be a teaching sector also. Any kind of related to Jupiter and Mercury. They can even become a stock broker also, okay, or they might have invested in the stock sometimes. Now what happens when Mercury is conjuncted with Venus? So their spouse can be having some creative ability or talent, okay. It also shows that their spouse might be very interested in cinemas, musics or entertainment stuff and all. And it also shows that their spouse will be very beautiful, youthful and all. So these are all things can be seen through the Mercury and Venus in the 7th house of T9 chart. Now coming to the planet Sun. Now what happens when Mercury is conjuncted with planet Sun? Now what does planet Sun represents? It represents your ego, it represents your leadership qualities, it represents government, it also represents politics. So when Sun and Mercury are conjuncted in the 7th house of your D9 chart or Navamsa chart, that shows that you will get a spouse who might be having very great ego, or who might be having very great egoistic nature. It also shows that you might get a spouse who might dominate you. It also shows that you might get a spouse who might be having very good leadership qualities, who might be working government, or even if the spouse is working in the private sector, might be in a very high post, okay, like manager stuff and all. Now what happens when Mercury is conjuncted with planet Mars? Now what does Mars represent? It represents aggressive nature. It also represents your courage, boldness and all. It also represents any type of engineering things or any type of engineering stuff. It also represents technical things, okay, if connected with Mercury. It also represents logical ability also. Now it also represents energy, physical energy, okay. So when Mars and Mercury are conjuncted in the 7th house, that shows that your spouse might be very energetic person, very practical, very youthful. It also shows that your spouse might be having very good logical ability. It also shows that your spouse might be interested in technical things and all. Now it also shows that your spouse might be involved in real estate business or might have invested in the stock markets and all. Now what happens when Mercury is conjuncted with planet Saturn? That shows that what does planet Saturn represents? Planet Saturn represents old looking, matured reality and your karma. So it also represents hard working, laziness and workaholic mainly. Now when Saturn is with Mercury, that shows that it's a very good combination to get the spouse, okay. You'll get a matured spouse, very practical spouse type of quality, okay. It also shows that you will get a spouse who might be very old looking and also stick towards the reality and all. It also shows that you will get a spouse who might be very workaholic, who might have some professional ethics and all, who might be having some principles that you need to follow it, okay. So these are all things can be seen through when Saturn and Mercury are conjunct in the 7th house, okay, which is a very great placement for Saturn especially. Now what happens when Mercury is with Rahu? Now what does Rahu represent? It represents illusion, Maya, right? It also represents like absorbing everything, like obsession type of stuff and all. Now Rahu is an unorthodox planet, right? So when Rahu and Mercury are conjunct in the 7th house, that shows that you might get divorced, or your spouse might cheat over you, or you might cheat to your spouse sometimes. It also shows that there might be some illegal activities going with your spouse, okay, or your spouse might be doing some illegal activities. So these are all things can be seen through, and Rahu and Mercury are conjunct in the 7th house. But the spouse you are getting, the person you are getting married can be very clever, because Rahu represents the cleverness, full planning and all. So your spouse might be very good planner, so you need to take advice from your spouse, okay, when Rahu and Mercury are sitting in the 7th house especially. But you need to be very careful in the relationship, you might be having some issues, okay. Now what happens when Mercury is conjuncted with planet Ketu? Now what does Ketu represent? It represents separation, detachment, divorce, okay. It also represents spiritual things, okay, so isolation. So when Mercury and Ketu are conjuncted in the 7th house, that shows that you will get a spouse who might be very spiritual, who might love isolations and all, who might love to live alone. It also shows that you might get even divorce also. So these are all things can be seen through when Mercury is sitting in the 7th house of your T9 chart or Navamsa chart. And it also shows that you will get a spouse who might negotiate, who might try to negotiate you only, or you yourself might negotiate your spouse. So these are all things can be seen through when Mercury is sitting in the 7th house of your D9 chart or Navamsha chart. So yep, this is it for today guys. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe below, or else I'll see you in the next video. So if you want any consultancy, please to contact to my given below WhatsApp number, or else you can even mail me also. So until and unless, thank you, bye bye, love you, take care.